With transition questions, we have to remember that we are dealing with the ideas in the sentences. This is not about what sounds good. And so if you are just going with that, you are very likely to get this wrong. And so what we really want to make sure we do here is think about, in the dumbest way possible, what these two sentences are saying. And so here's a case where, we normally talk about dumb summaries for these, but I'm going to highlight the idea of narrowing your focus. Not taking in everything that they're saying, trying to just kind of chop it up into smaller bits and really think about like smaller ideas. That way we can more easily notice when ideas change. So what do I get from these sentences? So first of all, I'm going to read the sentence here, which is kind of annoying because it looks like two sentences, but remember for the previous question, we needed to combine them. So I'm going to treat it like one sentence. What is it saying? Typically, that sounds like an important word. The ice sheet begins to show evidence of thawing in late summer. This follows several weeks of higher temperatures. Okay, so typically this thing happens. Now I'm going to skip the transition word because I don't know what I'm going to say here, but let's go right into the second sentence, which is here. In the summer of 2012, virtually the entire Greenland ice sheet underwent thawing at or near its surface by mid-July, the earliest date on record. So there's a clear shift here in the ideas. Typically, this happens, but here's a weird circumstance. And we can narrow our focus and try to understand this even more. Typically, things happen in late summer. However, in the summer of 2012, it was by mid-July. This thing happened early, right? So there's a contrast between the late typical way of that things happen and this particular circumstance where it was early. So by narrowing our focus, we really see this contrast between lateness and earliness, between something being typical and something being kind of a freak accident. So that makes it clear that we need a contrast word like but, because we're trying to show that contrast. If we ignore that, if we don't dive into that piece of the sentence, we're more likely to pick something like A, because we see that they're talking about summer and then they're giving us a particular summer, but they're trying to get a point across. It's not just an example, it's specifically an example that contradicts the typical pattern. So A is, I think, a trap here if we're not doing the right process for this kind of question. What do these other words mean? Well, moreover is basically a word that means and so again, this isn't really an and sentence. There's more to this. There's some other extra meaning, and as such is kind of like so is basically the simplest word that's similar, and so these aren't cause and effect here. It's not like this particular summer of 2012 happened because of all the other summers. Remember, it's an outlier. It's something that's different, and so it's not caused by those other ones. It's happening despite all those other ones. There's another contrast word. So with transition questions, really make sure that your brain is on the right track. If you're just going with what sounds good, you might get it right, but you really want to formalize that process and try to get your brain to think about why an answer might sound good or bad. Is it just because it's a word you like? Or is there something about the meaning of the sentences that requires that word? That's the kind of thing we really want to make sure we're considering, because these can be difficult. And they absolutely tried to get you to keep, for example, here. There's a reason that's choice A. They wanted you to keep that. They designed the question to get you to miss the contrast. And if you're watching this video, I wonder, am I right? Did you pick A? Because that's what most people pick when they get it wrong.